Mark, we spoke months ago about trying to help other people in their property investing journey, trying to think of all sorts of ways how we could do that. You love property and I love property. We've been doing property for over a decade.
Yeah.
And then we had a conversation about getting some content out there for people that hopefully will help people. So tell us more about your thoughts around that.
Well, I mean, I guess part of the conversation we had was about lots of training courses being out there, and people often being disappointed because they weren't really getting an awful lot from it. And so coupled with, I mean, our experience is probably in excess of 20 years between us, 10 years each probably, in investing in property. We've got a lot to give, and a lot of people have contacted us, and we've helped a lot of people. And I think that when people are disappointed with something, you kind of think, well, how can we help, and how can that, how can we sort of get involved with people's journey and help them to invest, but also in a more real way, to try and uncover some of the real truths that often people don't necessarily want to talk about. They just cover it up, or they just talk about all the stuff that they think that people want to hear, and not actually the stuff that they end up learning, and they think, actually, why didn't we know this before? It can be from the small things to the big things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in order for us to help a broader group of people, we thought, what better way to do it than by video and put it out online. And
we both do quite a lot of property networking. We go to a lot of property networking events, including your Cambridge Property Community networking event, which you run every month in Cambridge, which is brilliant. I go to that, have been for years. It's a great event. And I think at that event, but also at other events as well on the circuit, we've both spoken to a number of people over the years where they've spent thousands and thousands of pounds. I spoke to someone last year who told me they spent £5,000 for an online training course on deal packaging and deal sourcing. And I remember thinking, good God, that is a lot of money. And in exchange for that £5,000, what they got was essentially online video content, great quality, but it's a lot of money. Without any necessarily any mentorship, any one-to-one advice, any networking opportunity coming off the back of it. And it took them a year to go through that content, which they were pleased with, and that's helped them a lot. But nevertheless, it does leave you thinking, okay, that's a big investment for people. And unfortunately, not everybody out there comes off the back of those training events thinking, I've got exactly what I need from this. And now I know exactly what I actually need to do, and I'm going to implement my plan and get where I need to be to achieve their goals that they've got in their property life.
So what's going on in this space? Is it because it's too generic? Is it because it is online? Is it because they're just targeting a lot of people, or they're just finding that it's an easy way to make a lot of money off of people who are interested in property, and they take advantage of the fact that people aren't experienced? And so, what is it about these training courses that don't always give people, not necessarily the right, I'm sure they give them good information, but it seems to be costing a lot, and some people are disappointed with it. And certainly from the bigger trainers in the country, I guess, they tend to funnel an awful lot of people in there who possibly may not even be able to afford to actually invest in property. So the fact they found the money for the training course is one thing, isn't it? But, do they have the money to invest? And are they being a little bit sort of naive to think that actually, we don't need money to invest, or that they think that they're going to find money from other sources? In my experience, it always, it's important to make sure you can afford to actually make an investment into property. It's not something that really you can just go into thinking that you can do a no money down deal.
Yeah, I agree completely. We've spoken before about no money down. Is it really investing if you're doing rent to rent and so on? I think there's on balance, there's probably a lack of realistic expectations out there in property investing about what you can actually achieve. in the time that you have available, especially if you're in a corporate career, or if you have a very successful trading business like you do yourself in photography. I had a very successful corporate career as a chartered accountant, leaving my job in 2022 to focus full-time on property. And I know that for us, we were trying to, for years, manage property investing alongside our corporate worlds, which can be done. But in reality, those no money down, those rent-to-rent deals, there are those sort of unicorn deals out there as well. But you've got to hunt really hard for them, and it takes a lot of time. So you've got to put in a lot of time and a lot of effort. And yes, people find some great deals that involve little capital injection, but I think the reality is, and certainly the vast majority of the people we speak to, they've got some amount of capital to invest. They're either looking for a better return on the money that's sat in the bank, not doing an awful lot, getting maybe a pitiful rate of interest, or they're putting the money in the stocks and shares, maybe in a stocks and shares ISA, and thinking that that's a good investment decision. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Sometimes those values go down, sometimes they go up, as with all investments. But I think a lot of people are put off investing in property because they think it's time consuming, huge amount of effort, and maybe they don't have the knowledge and understanding on how to do it well, and maybe try and systemize it and make it as passive as possible for them, given their busy lifestyles.
It's the age-old adage of being simple but not necessarily easy.
Yeah, that's right.
It is a very simple process. Buy house, refurbish, find tenant, put in tenant, rent out, have income.
Yep.
It is relatively straightforward, but there's obviously a lot of behind the scenes stuff that goes on that obviously what we want to do is to try and help people with that and iron out any sort of misconceptions they may have from what people have told them. And I think probably just to be open and honest about this kind of stuff up front. I think people are, nowadays are more receptive to that rather than, just seeing the overall picture, because it's very easy to sort of say you can make money in property, or you can be an overnight success, or you can buy your way into being sort of a property millionaire, let's say. And I'm not really sure. Well, certainly in my experience, I've done that over a period of time, and it's let's say taken me 10 years, to get that far. And it doesn't have to be. We're not talking thousands or hundreds of properties necessarily. You can do it quite easily with 5 or 10, or it doesn't have to be a lot, even to replace your income. So we recognise that people perhaps are being sold a bit of a dream here, and we want to try and help people to just to try and be a bit more honest about things and a bit more real. Obviously, you've got a massive sort of experience in the tax side of things, being an accountant, which is going to help a lot of people. And I'm sure that conversation, when you are helping people on a one-to-one level, you're going through that process of like, okay, how does your tax position look?
Yep.
I've been to a number of seminars before where people talk about tax at the front and have to generalize it, and you just can't generalize tax. It's impossible. It's completely independent on everybody's circumstances. The only way you can give any kind of advice on that is by knowing that all of their circumstances, which of course in a room with 30, 40, 100, 1,000 people, you're never going to be able to give advice on it. So just things like that, I guess, we're trying to help people with and get clear on it, and things like what to expect from refurbishments and what to expect from self-managing. You don't self-manage, I self-manage. So there's a lot of experience here that we want to try and help people with.
What do you say to the sort of cynics out there that say, well, those that can do and those that can't teach?
Yeah, well, I mean, there is a lot to be said for that. I mean, I've in my career as a photographer, I spent quite a number of occasions talking to other photographers and sitting down at the end of the year, let's say for a big conference, analysing the business, and then being able to go into that in a seminar scenario and tell people what my figures were, what my average order was, how many clients I had, what I was offering to those clients in terms of product and service and customer satisfaction, and then ultimately those figures were, I could honestly stand up and say, this is what I've done in the last 12 months. And I always used to talk about the last 12 months. It wasn't what I did when I first started or what I was doing in the best year that I had in 2016 or whenever it was. It would have been last year's figures, this is what we achieved and what did we do to get there and how can that information help you and let me answer any questions, that kind of stuff. So I do believe that it's helpful to speak to people that are actually doing it. It doesn't even matter with a portfolio if it's long term, whether or not they've bought any investments in the last year necessarily. If they've got 10 years worth of purchasing properties and going through that process, I think there's a lot to be learned from people like that. There's obviously a lot to be learned from people who are actually buying stuff. But for those people that are not doers but teachers, well, yeah, maybe I've got a bit of an issue with that, but then I would say that, wouldn't I?
Well, you've done it as well as teacher, haven't you? Which is really important. I think when anyone's trying to pass on their knowledge, it's important that they've got some experience of what it is they're actually showing other people and how to do things. I think the same for you in your photography business, and for me as a finance director in my accounting and finance career, one of the real enjoyments that I got from that was helping other people achieve what they wanted to achieve, seeing other people's careers grow and blossom, seeing their professional development, seeing them get promoted, be more and more successful. And I don't think I necessarily fully appreciated that in my sort of younger years necessarily. I think it's something that I've really realised a lot more in say the last 10 years or so, how rewarding that really is. And so trying your best to help as many people as possible achieve what they want to achieve in property and achieve their property goals is huge, which is why I think when we go to networking events, I have a huge amount of conversation around, well, what's your goals? What is it you actually want to achieve? What's important to you? You can say, well, this is a property training course we do here, this is the course we do over there. But one of the frustrations I always have with a lot of that sort of training course pushing, one training course onto somebody is that actually really suitable for me? Because no one in this room yet has actually really sat down with me properly and had a conversation with me about what's right for me. How much money do I have? How much time do I have? How much knowledge do I have? How much willpower do I have? There's a lot of focus on mindset, which is important, but I think we've both experienced that actually there's less focus on, yes, mindset is important, of course it is, but what about all those other things and your skill set? Because mindset alone is not enough either. So for me, the conversation starts with someone's goals and what they want to achieve.
Yeah, I think it's important to try and work out what it is that people want to achieve with any business, but also, if let's say you're employed and you have always been employed and you love your job and you want to go into property investment, the naive thing to do is to think it's just an investment, or I'm just going to buy this and it's just going to sort itself out over there. You have to treat it as a business. And the difference between, me and a lot of people is that I've run a trading business. So since 2005, I was working for myself. And the company I worked for before that, whilst it was an individual business that I eventually became a business partner in, ultimately I was employed, but it was a very small business. So I kind of saw all the nuts and bolts of how that worked. And often when you're in a bigger business, you don't necessarily always see it. You don't see the marketing, you don't see the tax conversations, you don't see the things like VAT returns and other costs and overheads that come out of that business. You can often be blinkered by that. And so having the knowledge of how to run a business has made a massive difference to me in property investing. And I do see sometimes that there is a lack of that when people are trying to learn about property investment. They kind of, for example, they don't understand even basic things about tax, which is really important if you work for yourself. So yeah, understanding people's goals, but also understanding whether or not property investment is right for them. So as you say, to invest in stocks and shares, to see that go up and down, it's a relatively easy process to do that through some kind of platform. Whereas with property investment, if you're having the bricks and mortar property yourself, you've ultimately got customers, which are your tenants. They need to be looked after. They need to be managed. You need to make sure they're paying, all these kind of things. So yeah, I think definitely that is part of the whole process that's people need to kind of just be mindful of, I think, at the start.
Yeah, great. Okay, so we're really excited to be bringing content to all of you as often as we can, valuable content that we think will really help you achieve in your property journey.
Absolutely. Some of it will be conversational, like Neil and I talking. Perhaps we may have people coming on the show where we can interview them and talk about their experiences, and maybe even have different niches where people sort of specialise in different areas of property. And also it may even be individual videos from us to cover various things that we feel would be really useful to you to learn, and stuff that you can either choose to watch, or it might not be relevant to you and you can skip and go on to the next stuff. So yeah, we're very passionate about property. I'm passionate about property and photography. Neil's passionate about property and accounting and all things money. So that combination, we feel we can bring some really great value content to you. So thanks for watching.
Thank you.